was at C-STEP, what is wind energy? I said, it's energy from the wind. They said, no. Then I went back to the basics. It was a huge project we were doing with the European Union. I studied what is, I understood what it is, and then I think I convinced and conveyed to the media what it is. I'll never forget that lesson in my life. And that's something I have adapted, keeping always my favorite topic, keep the audience in mind when you communicate. Don't assume and presume they know everything. Don't assume and presume that they understand everything that you say. I always put myself into the shoes, slippers, bare feet of an audience before I start communicating. It's so important, and I have found, and in fact, in a lot of my trainings, I've included a module called as audience mapping. Before you do anything, map your audience. If it is the policy maker, what do they want from you as a researcher? What do they do? Do you think that they don't know anything? Of course they know everything. But what perhaps they lack is the time to look into it more deeply. There are huge subjects. So that's why they collaborate with organizations, individuals, practitioners like him to understand a concept. Now, if that is the reason why they are in touch with you, then give them back what will be useful for them. Don't go into some big technological words which they don't understand. They'll take your project and say, thank you very much, it's lovely, and put it away. Or give it to someone and say, note below the, please, isko dekh lena, kya hai, pata nahi hai. It's happened, it's seen, but not all are like that. I've been very lucky to closely interact with whom I call as my customers, who have given us projects, understand what they want. I've been very lucky, and I think we have fairly done a good job. I also feel, as Dr. Indu said, and we were talking about during tea, one of the key things that policymakers or even the community, even the media, expect is evidence-based. You can't just go and tell them there's climate change. What is climate change? The climate is changing? Yeah. But how, what, why? How does it affect me? If it rains, I'll carry an umbrella. If the tree falls down, I'll probably plant another tree. But you need to understand the larger concept, how climate change affects each one of us. Affects environment, affects people, affects community, and communicate that as it should be communicated again for the said stakeholder. I think it's very important that data is used effectively, which I feel has started acting up very nicely. I'm also on a lot of international platforms like the On Think Tanks, the Southern Voice, and I think they all, and so do we in India or South Asia, understand the importance of data. That is why it's very good in MAHE for the master's students, public policy. Data science in governance was an important module that I handled along with a colleague of mine. C-STEP has taken up data, and they have a huge wing. When I joined them, there was hardly one person. Now it's a huge wing. We have in my previous organization. I also feel that from the mind or from the aspect of a policymaker, to make a good decision, it has to be driven by data, because they are also responsible to community. Without that, they can't just say, we're bringing this policy. Something as simple as, one of my favorite example that I've used several times for the students is, there was a policy brief that was done, I think somewhere in Rajasthan, why only women get malaria. When the study was done, it showed women go down the steps to the step well, they collect water, and that's where the thing. Now, if the government had to introduce taps or address that, it needed evidence, it needed data. Because it's not just, giving some injection and tablets and saying. Another good example I would like to use as far as malnutrition is concerned, in my previous organization where I was, it was found through our data and study, why are a lot of women have children who are stunted. Then when we did the study, it was so interesting to see, we did for the government of Karnataka. The government through the Anganwadis give these iron tablets. So obviously, who gives these iron tablets? the Anganwadi teachers, apart from teaching and other things. It's a good thing. But are they educated on what are the after effects of iron tablets? Obviously, no, not all of them. So when we did the study and we interviewed people, very nicely, sir just now said, for any communication, first have your questions ready to get almost the right answer. So we developed a questionnaire and we tested it and we did. It was so surprising when we spoke to the community people, in spite of the government making huge efforts, why is it children are stunted? So the study said that women take the tablet from the Anganwadi, go home, have the tablet, and obviously we know when iron tablets are taking, your stools will be black in color, pregnant women. So the elderly women said, don't eat this, it'll kill your child. So they used to take the tablets, throw it in the dustbin and go. Then the study said, then recommendations are given, and we are very grateful the government of Karnataka during that time to take up a lot of these feedback. That's why communication becomes an important aspect. And I remember my friendly battle with the researchers. Please conduct research and tell us, don't keep it only on your computer. We want to know what you're doing, why you're doing, how you're doing, because we want to speak to the media. And I think this is where media has become a very important component in policy making. They reach out to more people. I've again been fortunate to interact with a lot of media, write for some of the media, key media here. And every time they'll say, Annapurna, don't get those big words. Don't tell your researchers to give big ideas. I still remember somebody said nuke. I didn't even know what nuke meant. It was something to do with energy. I said, even I don't know, how will people know? Change it to something simple. And the very popular paper in Karnataka gave it back to me and said, please. So I remember the researcher telling, that person doesn't know anything. I said, doesn't matter. If you want it to be published, give that person what they want, because they know their audience, not we. So I think data communication is important, and I'm very happy with the topic that MAHE has chosen, the linkages between data and communication to bring out robust policies. So I stop with that. There's a lot more, but I'll stop with it now.
Thank you, Dr. Annapurna. Now I request Dr. Kururaja, Associate Professor, SMI MAHE, to speak on the subject.
Thank you. Thank you. Basically, as an ecologist, I'm a storyteller. I don't know about data. I don't know about anything. What I do is I communicate in terms of a story. And when you tell a story, you have to pitch in within 5 minutes of your story the point where everything revolves, right? So that's your problem statement. And then you start revealing that through the story, and then there is an ending. If it is happy or sad, it's up to you. So that's what I do with frogs, not with people. So I go to field, try to figure out what is happening to frogs. And why frogs? Because they are something like 360 million years old. That is 360 followed by 6 zeros old than human beings, who are 2 followed by 5 zeros old on planet. You can just imagine, right, the number. There is 360 followed by 6 zeros versus 2 followed by 5 zeros. What this 2 followed by 5 zeros are doing to 360 followed by 6 zeros. And that is where we are talking about climate change issues. And what we did last year, and it was actually the work happened during the COVID time, some 1,000-odd scientists across globe, we sat together. We started looking at what kind of species we have in our countries. For example, from India, there were 100+ scientists. Like that, you have from Australia, USA, Europe, everywhere, 1,000+ scientists. And we started looking at each of the species, what we know about it. And that is what we published finally in Nature, which is, for scientists, it's a great thing. I don't know about others. What we published was that among all the 8,000 species that we surveyed or checked for their habitat status, 41% of them are facing threats. So at one point in India, we say we are discovering new species, almost like 10 species per year. At the other side, we are losing 41% of whatever species we have in the globe every year. So the main reason we also figured out that it's a climate change. Because frogs don't have their own body temperature like human beings. We have our own body temperature, right? 36 degrees, and something happens to us, we say, we go and consult a doctor. But frogs don't have that kind of stuff at all. So even 1 degree change, you don't see frogs at all. How many of you know frogs around your home? If you don't have frogs, you have to seriously think there's a problem there. If you're having frogs, you are safe for a while at least. So that is what we were able to communicate as a story. The frogs are dwindling. And that's the major vertebrate group. Vertebrates are those who have backbones, like us. So that's the major vertebrate group in the world who are dwindling, like 41% of them are going down. So what is to be done? Now that is where the ball is with us to communicate to the policymakers. So we have approached now our current forest minister, Ishwar Khandre, and tried to tell him that this is what is happening. Can we do certain things on ground? What are those things we have to do? Then again, the story comes back to us in saying that whether you have to go and fortify certain areas and say conserve this, which is not a feasible solution, the better option is to go to people and ask them what they have in their background. So how do they do it? They take photographs, they will ask questions, what species they have, then the interaction develops, and that's how we are going to have, perhaps over a period of time, a happy ending story. And that's where I stop.
Thank you, Dr. Gururaja. So now the role of the discussant.
Yeah,
Probably
thank you.
you will have to, or what you could do is you could ask one question each from each of the panelists.
Yeah.
And then we'll request them to reply to the question.
Yeah. Okay.
So first we can start with Dr. Indu Murthy.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Say
Yeah, sir.
something
Before
on
that,
your
I
own,
want to
please,
share
please,
something.
Please share something on of your own, and then you can ask them.
Yeah, before that, I want to thank MAHE University and ISEC and other collaborators for this opportunity. So the role of discussion is nothing but, so today we are discussing about the interlinkage between the data and communication. Okay, so we need to reduce the gap between data and communication to make better policy. Okay, so similar that, so what is the role of discussion is nothing but, so I need to reduce the gap between the panelists and the audience. Okay, so I want to interlink. Okay, so by fueling the process of asking questions. Okay, so before that, I want to share my views on how we can able to interlink the data as well as the communication. So one day I was searching through Google, okay? So I am searching some products. So next day, when I am opening Google, that Flipkart or Amazon some products, okay? So that products will come, okay? So they are gathering the data, okay? So nowadays, their data are very much costly, okay? So even for climate related data, so not only climate related data, all the data, okay? So there are so many websites are there, so they are charging very much for the data. So data are very much costly today, okay? So we need to interlink the data and communication to make the effective policies, okay? So, so many countries, they have used this strategy, like interlinking the data with communication for framing the better policies. Like in Germany, so they have used this for framing the climate change related policy. Similarly, Uganda, so they have used this in the health sectors. Okay, so even in India, so that you might have heard the word Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Okay, so that is also related to that insurance. Okay, so they have interlinked the data. Okay, like climate related data. So for as well as communication. So we are talking about two things. One is data. Another one is communication. Okay, so data is nothing but, so this is the base upon which we are framing the policy. Okay, so second component is communication. Okay, so communication, it will ensures, okay, so to make better policies. Okay, so whether it is reaching the stakeholders, okay, so whether the policies are implemented perfectly. Okay, also we have to adjust the policies based on the feedbacks received from. Ma'am, can you able to say what is the importance of accurate, timely data? Okay, because so we are saying that we have to interlink the data with communication.
Right.
But the problem is, so if we are getting data in delayed state, okay, so in that case, whether what is the role of this? Could you please insight?
Yeah. timely data becomes very important in certain instances. For instance, when we're talking about flooding in Bangalore, we are all sitting in Bangalore, I think unless there is a timely communication, then obviously action gets delayed, the impact becomes larger. So it's not always the case that you need timely information or some kind of data which is real time, not always. But many a time that becomes very, very important. However, the midway between that is to not just wait for the best of science or best of data to become available. Now, I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that generation of data is time consuming, personal, intensive processes, and it also involves a certain amount of cost and technical skills as well. So although yes, the best form of data is real-time data, timely data that needs to be available, but sometimes or many a time, this won't be available. So what's the next step? I think we shouldn't be really saying that there is no data, we can do nothing about it. There's always a way out. There's always a proxy that is there. So one needs to think about the problem in the larger sense than being tied down by a linear thinking fashion. I think since I do see students here, I really would want you people to be able to kind of start thinking out of the box. Yes, there is a problem, but then don't think of the typical ways of solving it. It might require doing something beyond that. Now, typically, traditional knowledge is definitely one thing that I would definitely want to bring in here. We think science, generating data, sitting in fancy labs or offices is the only way to get knowledge. Field knowledge is the best. Dr. Guru Raja is here. He made it very clear that unless you step out and see what's happening, it's impossible. I myself have been a field ecologist for about 20 years. I also understand that field data, the kind of insights that you get is immense there. That's not real-time data. It's a cumulative effect of what's happened in the past, historically, that you're seeing today. That gives you insights. So that's also real-time data in a way. It just takes a different lens to understand, a different way to decipher it, and use it for decision-making. So real-time data or timely data, although the term means something, for certain cases, it needn't necessarily be something that's happened now, today, and in this moment. It could be a cumulative information that is gathered, and traditional knowledge is definitely one of those. Go talk to a farmer. He will know, or she will know, exactly what's happening with the system. They don't need, fancy gadgets to take certain decisions. So I think we will need to start looking at knowledge, information, beyond the borders of data within the computers, data that a satellite generates, or a remote sensing gadget, or any fancy technical gadgets could generate. So this is just something that I really kind of feel very strongly about. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, shall we ask audience to post any question to?
We'll finish all the panelists and then open it.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I add to what?
Yeah, yes.
So timely data all depends on the question that you are asking, right? Like as you rightly pointed, for flooding, I can't wait for 10 years data to come and then I'll do something. You have to respond to the question in hand. Right now, you have to do it. But certain questions like climate change, we have been using it quite often. But when you look at the data, where is the data? And even to talk about climate change, you need decade-long changes, not 1 or 2, 3 to 4 decades of data you require to tell there is a shift in something that's happening. Otherwise, it's very cyclical, right? So in that sense, you can't simply say, I want climate change data right now on my table. It won't come. So ensure that what kind of question that you are asking, based on that question, I think your timely data is going to help. Some of the things you have to wait. Some of the things you have to use some gadgets which are much more sensitive to the changes that happens and gives precise information. Sometimes you have to rely on like proxy data and to say, for example, there are diseases in frogs. You can't simply wait for hundreds of frogs to die. If you're seeing one frog dying, then you have to respond to that and say, there are frogs dying, there is some issues with the fungal infections and all, how do we respond to it? So this is what I wanted to add. It all depends on the question that you are asking.
Yeah, okay. Sir. So my question is to Madam Annapurna. So ma'am, we know the importance of communication. So communication is more important for making the policies, okay? So we know that so when we have effective communication, or if we are framing some policies, so that should be reach the stakeholders, okay? So nowadays we are having so many communications, like we are having Facebooks, Instagram, LinkedIn, so many things are there. So my question is, ma'am, what role does digital media play in disseminating policy information and making public support?
Okay, thanks. That's a lovely question. I won't only stick to digital media because, yes, I agree with you. Social media platform has become very, very vibrant these days. But what goes into it is how real it is, integrity, who's writing it, how are they putting the information, do they even know what they're writing? You know, it's very important. But yes, as a communicator, when I used to work with the researchers, unpack your information to suit the audience. For example, if you send a 200-page report to a policymaker, they hardly have any time to look at it. Probably they look at the executive summary. Perhaps they'd be interested in a policy brief. You cannot give a report to a media and saying this is the outcome of this seminar. But if you give them a press note, giving a crux of what happened, what were the deliberation, I think what we do is we do a lot of cut and paste. We write one report, 200 page, we cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste. Sometimes we cut and paste the same thing. We forget. I think that is some unlearning and unwinding we have to do. So I always used to tell myself and my researchers, unpack your information. Have a report. It's very important to give to a funder for, like he very beautifully said, documentation is very important. After 10 years, somebody should know what, let's say Dr. Harini did in the first conference. The next Dr. Harini, when he or she comes, you know, they'll know, oh, that's how this sustainability started. That's important, but why would a media want to know? What would they want to know 10 years later? So I think unpacking information, and as you said, social media is good, digitization is good. If you want quick information to go, we all use it, right? I remember when I lost some luggage in a flight, first thing I did was went onto my Facebook account and sued the people, and next day my luggage came. It's how effectively you use it. Whom do you tag on it? Why would you tag Tom, Dick and Harry, Mary, Jane and everyone? You have to have the right knowledge of who would want to read your this thing. I think that is what is not happening. People read. And I also feel, again in my experience, when do people read the social media or digital? I always say early in the morning, lunchtime, and before going to bed. There are very few people who read. So anything interesting, put it at only at these times. Otherwise, it just goes into the archives. So again, I'm repeating my favorite line, the right information at the right time for the right audience, which we never do. Digitization is important for posterity, but always not successful. Always not, if it's not used well. So that's what I say.
Just add.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, yeah. So on the communication bit, you know, the one is, of course, the relevance of it, and then the audience, as you rightly said. So I think it's really, really important to know the pulse of the audience. It makes no sense that you go to somebody who has, who is experiencing drought year after year, and you go with a set of data which says that they're going to be extremely heavy rainfall events, you need to prepare for it. It makes no sense to them. Secondly, the minute you're talking, you need to be able to connect with the audience to see, how do they relate to that information. Now, if you have a set of, fishermen sitting, coastal information, sea level rise, salinity, these make a lot of impact. You need to be able to translate, yes, sea level rise is a climate information, right? I do climate modeling, I say there's going to be sea level rise. Now, I just go and tell people there's going to be sea level rise. Theek hai. We've adapted, we've moved away from the coast 2 kilometers, tomorrow we'll move 5 kilometers. But that, it doesn't stop just with that. It also means, your groundwater, it's kind of, the ground aquifers, water aquifers could become saline. So your cropping patterns, what you're irrigated, the irrigation water becomes unfit for irrigation. You might even not have drinking water. So these are issues. And also secondly, you also need to say, I say that frequency, magnitude of flooding events increases. It makes no sense. So, okay, TK, fine. But the point is, if I say, instead of a 1 in 100-year event, what you're going to be experiencing is 1 in 5 years. The kind of rainfall that you experience this year, you will have it again in the next 2 or 3 years. Then people start taking action about it. If you say it's going to happen anyway, it's increasing, it makes not much sense. So the relatability angle is extremely important. So communication around those aspects becomes very, very pertinent.
Can I add?
Please.
Yeah.
No problem. You go ahead, ma'am.
No, because I'll forget, sir. That's why I want to say I'm getting very old. I think something interesting that Dr. Indumati said is, one advertisement, again, it's communication and media that still sticks in my mind is, I don't know how many of you all remember, to talk about, save water, save petrol, save everything. There's a little boy, his father is taking him to a school to drop him, and he's driving, and at the traffic light, the car, he doesn't switch off the engine. So the son very sweetly turns and says, Daddy, hamare liye bhi kuch bachana. That impacted, and that's what communication is. The impact it leaves behind, I mean, I must have seen it 20 years back. I don't know if it's still on air, I just wanted to say this, sir. The impact of communication, something as simple as sea level rise. Yep. If you go and tell them climate change, that's gottu namge ni hogri. But if you tell it in a larger, that's it. Sorry to take your
No issues, perfect. So again, I come back to my frog world. I don't know anything else. This is in 2007, 2008, when Facebook has just entered. And what we were struggling is number of observations on frogs, because there are nobody who will take out their cameras out during the monsoon, because if you take out your camera, it's going to get infected with fungus and you are going to lose your camera. But today, if you see, every day there will be a post on frog on Facebook. How did it happen? It didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of time. How did you start communicating? There are pictures where there are good photographers who photographed macro photography and posted the pictures of frog eyes, right? And then it triggers somebody, like, when did you take that photograph? In the monsoon. Oh, can you do it in the monsoon? Yes, you can do. As long as you have proper gadgets to take care of the moisture, you can bring your camera out and you can take a picture. Then came the invention of the smartphones. Now everyone wants to take a picture. I don't see many people coming here with a bazooka camera to take our pictures. I saw Harini taking with her phone. Somebody else also took, that even took from phone. Why? Because you have enabled the technology, advanced the technology, and all these things are interrelated. And that's when the communication also became very important. Now you see that the frog numbers of observation that's being put on Facebook is humongous. Nobody says, I don't want to go in monsoon to take photographs. It has also resulted in number of data observations that is coming in India. We have something called India Biodiversity Portal. I don't know how many of you know it. This is under Creative Commons license. You need to store data, right? It's not just on Facebook. The Facebook data is from Meta, so it will go to them. It's not yours. So if you put it on India Biodiversity Portal, it's under Creative Commons license. You have the observation coming from a particular location, stamped and in your name. Then you can use and see where, what kind of species are being populated. Are you seeing here? In last 30 years, the shift has been getting these kind of data, getting populated, getting stored. It works. It works when it strikes. As Madam rightly pointed out, right time should be right people. Communication is very, very essential. Why we are doing all these photography of frogs? If you are able to communicate that part, you are there with your data and communication.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I'm having one more question for you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So before that, so we are in 4G era and 5G is loading. So and we are talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, etc., sir. So with this background, sir, I just want to put a question for you. So like, so what are the challenges and opportunities in interlinking the data and communication for public policy.
Wonderful. Again, thank you very much. I shift from frog to something about sound. That's another field I'm trying to look at. So again, acoustics is the sound that you're hearing. Right now, if you close your eyes, there are background sounds that you hear, perhaps a sound of your AC or something else, or maybe silence. So this particular data has not been tapped in Indian scenario. We are all, as an ecologist, I will look at a frog and how it croaks and then say, oh, this is a species. But have I really recorded the sound of a space, right? If I record the sound of a space, how do I analyze that data? You have to sit in front of a computer, put it into a software, you should see the spectrogram, and then say, oh, that's a bird, there's a machine, there's honking of something, and that's how you analyze. But imagine if you're getting data 24/7, real-time data, do you have human capacity to analyze this data? And that is where, when you have generative AIs coming into the picture, it helps you out. And not that the generative AI will give you solution, but it helps you to decipher what is hidden in the data. As long as that is done, then rest is for us to figure out what we are looking at. It is the machine sound that is coming quite often in the surrounding, and then you have to minimize that, or it's the birds that are not heard so far, but they are coming back to your campus, and that's what we should be aware of. That's how we should start looking at how do we use technologies in our research that we do. Definitely, yes, for AI, this has helped us a lot when the data size is so enormous that humanly it is impossible to look at or not even to listen to this kind of data. I hope I am able to
Yeah,
understand.
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think large data sets, as he rightly said, it kind of helps you to collate it and bring it to a form. That doesn't mean we can set aside our brains and kind of think that the problem is solved. That's never going to happen. But I think it's really, really important to understand that whenever you're looking at such large data sets, AI generated, we really need to be careful about how we understand it and how it's generated. So looking at the history of the data generation, where it comes from, becomes very, very important in that context. Just blindly picking up the data would lead you to make very erroneous decisions. I think that's where it's really important. Secondly, I think more about what people are talking about more and more is that for you to even kind of come up with some kind of a solution-oriented AI-generated stuff, you need data first to decipher the patterns. Now, for deciphering patterns, yes, you need data. But then after you decipher the patterns, probably the machine can take over, but then that's a long way ahead. But we really need to take it with a huge fist of salt, I would say, not even a pinch of salt. There are dangers of getting into that domain.
Just to take off from where Dr. Indu mentioned, data important. How important is what we as communicators see. So I always say, what does your data say today? Not yesterday, not 10 years back. That's important. But today, what does it mean to a government? Why is it important? Is it important? Yes. Then why? Because you just can't go and give a policy maker saying this is very important data, you have to use it, or we've got it. Why is it important? I think we are doing very good. So why do you say that? I think it's very important to communicate it, and that cannot be done, as Dr. Indu and Dr. Gururaj said, without evidence. Once you have your formula and answers for the what and why, when is it important? Today or tomorrow? Because policymakers have a lot of priorities. Human resources, financial resources, they've already planned their activities. So you've got to convince them when it has to be done. Once you try to convince them, don't just leave it at that. Now do the how part of it. How can it be done? So in some of our researches that we did was, we just followed the 3 Fs, function, functionaries, and finance. It's very easy then for a policy maker or people in that department or in that space to look at it. Oh, okay, this is to do with finance. Give it to this person. This is to do with functions, how to do it. And this is to do with functionary, human resources. Don't make it even more difficult when you communicate research. Make it easy for them. Only then we can collaborate and work well together. Otherwise, it's of no use. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So we now invite questions from the audience. If there are any. Is there some mic? It can be passed around, please. So that there's one mic.
Thank you for the wonderful insight both on data and communication. A lot of practicality came across. This is related to AI. So the problem is, just to give an small example, deepfake. The word itself is a deepfake. Now people started believing it, so it's not their problem. They said that it is deepfake. Now if you analyze the data coming from there, let us say one is doing video analytics, right? So from where, what data is coming, what is the authenticity of the data? There are lots of questions with the data itself. So I don't know how much to rely also on the data. So it has to have a mixed methodology for any, especially policy decisions, because I work basically in marketing. Things are slightly different there, but when it comes to policy, it touches everybody's life. So I think in a mixed method, much deeper approaches are required, and data validation is extremely important. Because, and you know, there are lots of biases in the data. Whether it is a primary data, it could be a deliberate bias, it could be bias by design, it could be unintentional biases. So I think one has to be very conscious, especially when it comes to policy decisions at the governance level. So what is your take on that, and any thoughts on that?
I think all of you can respond.
Right. Perfect. Again, it comes back to the question that you have. For example, what I was talking about is the data which, even to analyze a day's long data, you need more than a month to listen to and figure out what is happening. That is where we go for generative AI, where we train the data set in saying that, oh, this is a bird song. Can you pick where else the bird is calling, right? We never say that the output which comes out is 100% sure. Then you have to train further to make that the data coming out of that analysis is better. So this is how the process happens. It's a black box process, but it still works in a manner. Then you figure out the question that you are asking. So I am still going back to the question. As long as my question is answered with that, I am fine. The interpretation part and how do you pitch in your policy is up to us, right? Now I would say in MAHE campus, this is what is happening. Can we minimize this kind of sound? Or can we increase this kind of vegetation so that you will get these kind of birds? That is the policy intervention I am seeking based on the interpretation of the data that has come out of generative AI. So you need to consciously think. If you depend on machine fully, there's no point of we being there. Right? Machine will also automatically generate a report and gives it to people, like how Google produces based on the values that you give in a report. It will generate a pie chart and shows how many reports, yes, no kind of stuff. But is that what we are looking at? So as long as you put your question over there and say who you are and what question you asked and where you want to position yourself in policy decision making, that is where I think you need to take a couple of steps back and say, this is only the interpretation of the result I am pushing forward. Yeah. Right? I'm not fully relying on you.
So based on the scientific research, I think my question doesn't apply there because it is more scientific. I was intended my question for the social science policy decisions because science is exact science and it's difficult to deny that.
I won't
and if the paper is published in Nature, it is difficult to question there.
Okay, I'm going back to your previous question of mixed methodology and a bit of social science. I completely agree with you. There is not one type or one way to gather data. We need to understand, again, my favorite word, audience. Yeah? For example, not everyone would like to write or be happy with the questionnaire. Not everybody is happy with having a face-to-face, I'll use the word interview because I can't think of something. People sometimes are not happy with an FGD also, focus group, because there's a lot of confidentiality that goes, depending on who it is. So if you need reliable data to an extent, I'm not saying all data is reliable, but somewhere we have to make a breakthrough and get data. And as Indu said very nicely, sometimes it's proxy data. We've got to imagine, and that's why reading and understanding other best practices is very important. Is it applicable to us? Yes, maybe 50%. Why not use it? So I think the method, like you said, mixed method, is taking, and I think today in public policy space, in the universities, this is something that all universities should focus on. How to gather data, and not in the final year of masters. It should start in the first year of degree. Practice has to be there. It cannot be, I can write beautiful English question and go. They've got to practice, and I'm very happy that MAHE actually has got 1 year to do that. I did a small training on social accountability tools with them, and they developed excellent questionnaire. And they went into the field and they brought out very good reports, and they made a presentation and they were scored on that for their master, one part of it. So I think it's very important how and why. I know a very dear friend of mine did a PhD on handloom saris. How did she gather data? She put it up on Facebook questionnaire. She contacted people one-to-one, and she's actually published a book last month just on the use of handloom saris in India. Now, she might know only 10 people, but she did a PhD on that. So you see the way she used a method to gather data, and I think that mixed methodology is very important. Otherwise, you will not get, and there will be no relevance or evidence. Indu, would you like to?
Yeah, just one point. The term that you used on validation, whatever form of data, whatever methodology we adopt, I think validation is a must. There is no way you can kind of come out with something and say, go for no, this is what your policy should be based on. Let's first acknowledge that the policy maker is also very intelligent. They know the problem. The minute you try to fake it with limited data, they see through it. There is no way. It's not that they don't know the answer. They're looking for data and evidence to back up their decisions. And that's where we come into play. And the other thing is, validation. See, it's an integral part of every methodology. Remote sensing, you have ground truthing. There's no way I can say, okay, there are 100 trees here. Unless I go and check it myself, I'm not going to accept it. So I think everywhere there is a sample that comes in which is for validation. So it's an integral part of any methodology we do, whether it is AI or whether it is, field surveys or, measurements that you do with sensors, low-cost sensors that are picking up for air pollution monitoring. There again, there are a lot of validation exercises that happen out there because it can be very different based on where you place it and the kind of gases they analyze. So that's also something. So I think it's a must and should validation, whichever methodology we do pick up.
Any more questions? Dr. Arini. Yeah, Dr. Arini, please.
Thank you for a very, very enjoyable and an interesting session. I have two very layman questions to pose to this wonderful panel. First thing is about denoising the data. Can you share some of your experiences around denoising, which will help, us get the reliable data set that we seek? And the second one is about communications. So data is one part definitely, and that's something we quantify, but there's also the other aspect of communication, non-verbal communication. How does that add reliability to what we say in public policy, policy making and decision making? Thank you.
Denoising.
It's yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, denoising is at multiple levels, right? Like I'm again talking from typical science, data-driven kind of thing. Don't get into other stuff. What we have done when people posted on, let's say, India Biodiversity Portal, there are data kind of thing, you have to look into data. There is no way that you can simply take the data and go ahead with it. So figure it out. If you have any doubt, ask that person who has posted it and go back and check, verify kind of stuff. It can be even in the data sets that we generate out of the field things kind of thing. The moment you see anomalies, the best way is always to visualize your data. So that's the first thing that happens. Because numbers, at the end of the day, it's an abstract science. 1 doesn't have any value with me. It's same with 9. So what you do is you have to visualize it. The moment when you visualize it, you will start seeing some of these anomalies, and then you will ask those questions, why there is an anomaly. It not necessarily that every time your instrument is making noise, it perhaps is from the field too. There could be a sudden rainfall, and your rainfall data is showing 100 mm rainfall, which hasn't happened in 133 years. So you should be able to understand how you are getting your data, and then perhaps you have to use your knowledge to understand that data and perhaps to set it aside and say, this is one time I may not be using. It again goes back to the question that you have in your mind, whether to include that data and go ahead, or you have to exclude that data and go ahead. So I will get into the data science. I don't want to do it right now, but this is how I would have seen it. Even in my sound data that I get, there is a lot of noise, like what actually I wanted, but beyond that also I will get those sounds. But I am not going to exclude it. I want to have an inclusive environment where I can see even those noises as part of the data set. The moment I exclude it, I am making a choice, or I am making a post-processing kind of thing. That is a skewed data for me. So some places I really want all the data to be there to understand what is happening. Some places I make my choice and say, I will remove this and see what's the pattern that is emerging out. So it all depends on the question that I have. Sorry, I don't know how you guys respond.
Would you like to? On the noise.
I just will state one example for the noise. Very recently, my team was doing a report on, they were analyzing the policies and, looking at crop productivity patterns in Odisha, etc. They were plotting that. So one of my very young researcher, came back and said, ma'am, I think there is a problem with this data. I said, why? They had plotted a graph, and there was a sudden dip in the yield, which looked very weird at the outset. The minute everywhere it's going up, or slightly, but then suddenly there was a huge dip. And I said, there's a problem with it. Which data source did you use? Then authentic government data source, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that part is taken care of. Then I said, have you tried to see the rainfall pattern? Was that an El Nino year? Heat waves, problem with rainfall? Have you been able to correlate? The reason I'm giving this example is right in the beginning, I talked about linear analysis of a problem versus looking at systems. Now here, crop production or agriculture is not an isolated thing here. It's very sensitive to a lot of other factors. It could be markets in some cases. It could be the rainfall. It could be a whole bunch of other things. So which is why, it's important to kind of look at the problem in all its entirety and not in isolation. So I definitely wanted to stress that, which is why I brought in that example. Now over to Annapurna to talk about the non-visual kind of non-verbal communication.
Yeah, I think non-verbal communication is very, very important. And that is why I know KPMG and others score on small organizations like C-STEP and Public Affairs Center, where they bring out these very colorful graphs and photographs, but I really don't know how it helps me because I can't understand. But yes, it's important. But as I say, just having images doesn't help in conveying a message. You've got to tell the reader what does this image say or what they have to look at. I say that in effective communication, give the choice to the reader or audience whether they want to read or see. Like as very nicely Dr. Indu said, all policymakers know what they are giving us to research on. It's not that they don't know. But sometimes they like to read also. But sometimes they are happy with images. It's very important. I still remember I'd gone for a pollution conference you all had, right? And there was an animated book that they brought out on pollution. And they launched it in that conference. And I said, what a wonderful idea. Anybody can use it. I didn't get a copy, but then I saw a copy. Why don't we use more visualization and giving complex data in a simple manner? It's very important because that's something we think if we write pages and pages and pages. I always used to tell in my communication class, in school we are all taught to write 20 pages and 30 pages for an answer. Today in real life they say give me 5 bullets. It's so difficult to undo what we've learned and do it again in 5 bullets. So I think Pressy writing when we were in school was very good, because it's become part of entrance exam. If you can't say something in 5 points, a 300 words thing, then you're not a good communicator or you can't convey anything. So I think visualization and non-communication. The other thing, just to add on to what Dr. Harini wanted was, why do we have policy brief? Why do we have blog articles? Why do we have newspaper articles? It's all communicating the same information in a different manner. That's all it is. It's how you design it, how you pattern it, how you emphasize on what has to be emphasized. Like, I hate when I get for review documents which runs into 3 pages with no headings, subheadings. I have to see, what are they trying to say? So much to read. But if it's broken into little units, this is what is called as information design and structured writing in writing. If that can be done, it's easy for the eye to read, easy for editors like me to understand what is written. I think the pattern of writing or pattern of non-communication, I'm also very happy that a lot of universities, I think even MAHE did, poster competitions. What are poster competitions for? Again, to bring out a 300-page report into a small 1 page. So in my previous organization and at CSTEP, what I did was, I picked up reports and I made them into 1-page poster, giving key information, title, year, who was the funder, and what were the objectives and key recommendation. And I've got, my team and I have got a good feedback. Hey, we didn't have to read your whole report. We can see it in this poster. So I guess it worked, visualization. I think as we say that, you know, we've got to encourage students to think out of the box and how to communicate. And this is one good way is visualization. It's really good way. I was driving down to the venue and I saw these huge banners. My eyes always catches. Of course, the car was coming fast. I was trying to catch, you know. And it's very important you project what you want to say even in the form of a banner. I could catch the word technology. I could catch the word 2, 3, you know. So it's very important. That's why they say in advertisement, where do you think you find the most key hoardings? Where do you find it? The hoardings which they advertise. It's always at the traffic light. That's the most expensive. Especially in Bangalore, it's very effective because we stay in the traffic light for so long. So, you know, they spend about 1 lakh or 2 lakhs for one hoarding. And you can read everything, every mistake, everything you can see. So it's also where you choose and how you choose to put these things. I hope I've, in a way, answered your question, Dr. Harini.
I will just add to this, denoising. There's a great study from ISEC. I don't want to mention the names and all. If you look at the study, they say from 1973 to 2023, they have analyzed satellite images of Bangalore. And there is a land use change kind of stuff. Now, if you only go by the visuality of it, you will see that Bangalore has now 88% of built-up areas and only 2% of greenness. But there is a flaw, built-in flaw in this. What is the flaw? The 1973 satellite imageries were 500-meter resolution, whereas the 2023 data are 5-meter resolutions. So how do you, and also the paper doesn't talk about when the data is acquired, right? If you are acquiring a satellite imagery in January and if you are acquiring satellite imagery in August, they are apart in the reflectance, right? Something which will look green in August, in January it doesn't look green. So that is not mentioned in the paper. So you need to really figure out, it's not just about denoising the data, it's also somebody presents it, you need to figure out what's the methods they have used, right? And you be the person who is doing this work. So you critically ask these questions, figure out whether what I'm presenting is relevant over here. Why I have to show you 50 years of data and say this is what the change has happened, which you could have shown in 2, 3 decade-long things and say, this is what the change is. Right? Are you getting these points in the sense? Yeah. So this is where you need to really figure out how it works. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, sir. Yeah. So before that, sir, I just want to thank the organizers for providing these eco-friendly conference kits. So in ecosystem valuation, so we used to use a word called option value. So option value is nothing but, so today we are enjoying some ecosystem. okay, like we are getting some pure air or something. So the same benefit should be transferred to our generation also. That is said to be ecosystem value. So this is the first step, okay, from the organizer. So they have provided this eco-friendly kits, okay, instead of providing plastic kits and all other thing. So they have provided this. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers. Yeah. So next, so as we know that, so I'm also having some comments or questions, okay. So as madam has said that, so today we are facing the reliability issue. So data reliability. So we are using so many secondary data like NSSO data and all other thing. But there is no reliability. So when the data is not reliable, so when we are framing the policy, so then that is not an effective one. So similar to that, so it is my own view. So how we can able to enhance the reliability. So since I am working under the center, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, so generally they used to prefer that, so go for primary data. So instead of going secondary data like NSSO and all of the thing, so you just go for primary data. So I am not saying that primary data don't have the problem of reliability. It is also having, but it is comparing to secondary data, it is minimal. So also we can able to reduce the reliability issues in the primary data itself. Okay, for example, we have to use cross-check. Okay, so if you are asking one question, for example, what is your income? So they will say some 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Okay, so but you have to make cross-checks. Okay, so how much you are getting from agriculture, how much you are getting from non-agriculture. So by asking so many questions, so you can able to check whether the reliability is there or not. So better we can, if we use the primary data, it will enhance the reliability. Okay, so that is my view. So one more thing, so I just want to ask a question to all the panelists. Yeah, okay, yeah. So as we know that, so in conclusion, so we are having two eyes, okay, but only one side. So similarly, so to make the public policy, okay, so we should have both interlinkage between the data and communication. So that is the effective way to make the public policy in the effective way. Thank you.
So thank you. So now we are, as a chairperson, I just like to, since the audience is students and academics from MAHE and other, and probably ISEC, and the subject is about data and communication in public policy making. Of course, sustainable development is always there, whether it is sustainable development or some other purpose. Data and communication and public policy making are what I would like to focus on. So having been involved in public policy making, what do we expect from the data that we have and communication? What sort of communication that we get? And Dr. Annapurna has very clearly told us that nowadays policy makers don't want 100-page reports or 200-page reports. In fact, in Toyota, they have a one-page policy. So nowadays, executive summaries also have to be as short as possible. So that is what is bullet points are the preferred mode for communication. But what about data? Now, when we talk about data, a lot of government messaging, even political messaging, government reporting is based on official data. Now, official data has a lot of problems with it. I'll give you an example. I was working in the Ministry of Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation in 2008-9. So those days, Nirmal Gram Puraskar awards being given to panchayats which made their panchayats completely open defecation free. So there would be huge thing. And there were a lot of, because of the awards were being given, there was a lot of reporting. And the reporting was such that every day the figures would be increasing from 78 to 79. Every day it would increase by 1%. So the top officials were feeling that, okay, now in a matter of a few months we will reach 100%. That was in 2008. But this is all official data, and there are many lacunae in official reporting. So even now, even though under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, reports say that all villages are 100% ODF, NFHS and other reports say that it is still about 70% coverage only, a usage also. So where here official versus actual would be a very important thing. So if your students can go to say a village or to a town or a slum, try to find out what are the actual figures, actual data of say whether it is, if you take toilets, how many toilets are actually there, how many are being used, if there are 5 people in a family, are all 5 using it, or how many toilets are not constructed at all, how many are constructed but not being used for purposes of defecation, how many are, and out of 5, if only 1 or 2 are using, usually we find only ladies were using, only young girls would use toilets. The elder people would, even if their toilet is there at home, they would not use it, they would go to the fields. And men, of course, men, boys, everyone, they would not use the toilets, only younger girls were using. So these are things, that insights that you would get when you go to the field, and you can say that your Gram Panchayat has been declared as open defecation free. But how is it that, but actually so many households do not have toilets, so many. So this is a good input for a policy maker, that okay, you look at all the official data with a lot of circumspection and skepticism. Secondly, gaps on official data. There are many data that are reported, but many more qualitative data and quantitative data may be required for appreciating what changes in policy are required. So those will, you can, when you go to field work, and field work is most important. When you go to for field work, you can identify the gaps in official data and try to get that data from your field work and then give it as a form of a report. Then a micro level analysis. So if you need not always think of policy makers as sitting in Vidhan Sabha or Niti Ayog or so, whatever. Your policy maker may be your Gram Panchayat president. Your policy, or he may not be making policy, but he may be at least implementing, he may make changes in the way the policy is implemented. Or it may be your municipal chief officer, or the mayor, or the commissioner. So if your studies are done at that level and they come up with some sort of useful recommendations or changes or insights that the Gram Panchayat can implement, or the municipality can implement, that would be a good input for policy, or at least practical. We need not always look at policy making, because we all know the saying that Indians are very good at making good plans, but we are poor at execution, at implementation. So why? But the fault does not lie on the person who is implementing. The fault lies with the person who is planning, because the person who has planned has not taken into consideration the aspects, the problems in implementation while devising the plan. So rather than saying I have made a very good plan, but I'm sorry it's not being implemented properly, I should look at myself and say that no, my planning, there is some fault in my plan because it has not been planned well. So therefore, your studies, when your students, etc., I would say that not look at the implementation aspect and see what you can find out, which you can help the people implementing these decisions, these projects, schemes, policies, etc. They can also give insights and changes in policy that are required. comparative pictures. For instance, we have this citizen Sakala. You have heard of Sakala? This is all Citizen Services Delivery Act in Karnataka. It's called Sakala. So many states have these acts. So one of the studies, they looked at all the, it is only a desk study. So they just went to their websites, looked at the different acts. They looked at what are the penalties that are prescribed if supposing an official does not give your caste certificate on time or does not give your building plan sanction on time. What is the penalty that has to be imposed on the official? That is what the Citizen Service Act. So this study showed that in some in Karnataka, it is say 250 rupees is the maximum penalty that can be imposed. And it was 20 rupees per day of delay. In some states, it was 500 rupees per day and 25,000 rupees maximum. So this came out in the study, which was done as just a field study. I mean, they sat in front of a computer, looked at the different acts and gave. And this was a very valuable input. And in our Administrative Reforms Commission, we made use of this study and recommended that, yes, this is 20 rupees per day is meaningless. So it has to be increased. And we have suggested, and this maximum also should be increased. So these are different types of studies that you can do which bring out data based on field work, based on comparative analysis, based on questionnaires, which will help in implementation, policy implementation and in policy making. So let us not just look at policy making but also at implementation of schemes, projects, because there are a lot of, if you look at the guidelines of schemes and policies, nothing is left out. Everything is taken care of. But unfortunately, even if 40% of that is implemented, it would be very great. So it is not implemented. But there are problems in implementation. So you look at why it is not implemented. It is not that people don't want to implement. There may be some issues. Then those should be taken back to the policymaker, saying, see, your guidelines say that you have to report every day on the number of visits you have to make to, say, the pregnant women. The Anganwadi, the Asha worker does not have her mobile phone, smartphone, or she does not being given money for the data charges. So how can she upload this every day? There are connectivity problems in her village, so she has to go to some other town and upload it. So it has to be offline. Can you make it offline? So these are things that you can bring out based on your studies in a village or a town, based on for a scheme implementation, which will help the policy makers to change their guidelines, change their instruction, etc. So I would say that field work is very, very important, and even if you do good field work, and of course based on scientific sampling, it cannot be just that you all know. Of course, I don't have to tell you what sort of sampling has to be done, and questionnaires are properly framed and they are canvassed and reports are written, and these, if they are even given as reports to the local panchayats or local municipalities, that would be a great service that you would do as a Department of Public Policy in MAHE and as students of public policy. And let us not look down upon these. Let us not think that only Niti Aayog, if I give a report to Niti Aayog, it is good. Our tallest leaders, they came from whether it is Jawaharlal Nehru or Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel or Raja, they were all municipal presidents and chairmen, and they came up at the top. So we have to go to the grassroots, look at their problems, issues, and then come up. So this is what, as a chairperson, I wanted to say, and we have come to exactly, I've finished at 6. I hope I thank our very distinguished panelists. I mean, they have all of them are extremely varied experience, varied backgrounds, and deep knowledge in their respective fields, and they have given us the wealth of their knowledge and experience. I thank Dr. Indu Murthy from C-STEP Bangalore, Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar, visiting professor DPP, Dr. K.V. Gururaja, associate professor from MAHE, and the discussant Dr. Thomas Felix, assistant professor ISEC Bangalore, for putting very searching questions and bringing out a lot of fresh insights from the panelists. I thank all of you for being in this wonderful audience. Thank you.
I thank all the distinguished speakers for their insightful inputs and providing the here for the data importance of data and interlinking of it. I would like to ask Arya and others to bring a token of appreciation and mementos to be given by Sri T.M. Vijay Bhaskar to Dr. Indu Murthy. Dr. Annapurna Ravichandran, and she would give the token of appreciation to K.V. Gururaj sir.
Thank you. This is so beautiful act. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, all of you. Now we have come to the final session for this SUSTAINITI 2024, the valedictory session. I request Dr. Raghavendra Prabhu, Deputy Registrar MAHE Bengaluru, to join us for the valedictory session. Dr. Prabhu obtained his PhD from MAHE Bengaluru in the area of manufacturing engineering in 2014. His teaching and research efforts are focused in the area of manufacturing, process optimization, and issues related to design and manufacturing. He has over 17 years of experience in teaching, research, and administration. He has successfully completed his tenure as a Deputy Registrar Administration at MAHE Manipal. Welcome you, sir. I request Dr. A. Ravindra, IAS retired officer, to come on the stage and occupy the dais. Dr. A. Ravindra served as an IAS officer in various capacities in government before retiring as Chief Secretary to the Government of Karnataka at the end of 2002. He holds a PhD in Development Studies and has specialized in the urban sector, including water management. He was responsible for introducing several governance reforms, such as rationalizing property tax system through the self-assessment scheme and mobilizing resources for urban infrastructure through municipal bonds. Dr. Ravindra has served as Deputy Chairman, Karnataka State Planning Board, and Senior Visiting Fellow at IIM Bangalore. Currently, he heads the Center for Sustainable Development, a non-profit organization, the Institute for Social and Economic Change, a research organization in social sciences, Bangalore. I welcome Dr. A. Ravindra. I now invite Sri T.M. Vijayavaskar to chair the session. Over to you, sir.
Dr. A. Ravindra, Sri Raghavendra Prabhu, distinguished members of the audience. We have come to the final session of our two-day national seminar on sustainable development in an unequal world, Public Policy Paths 2024. This is an the national seminar has brought together two very important aspects of modern policy issues. One is on sustainable development and the other is on inequality. Inequality has been a feature of, in different forms, has been a feature of human life, civilization from inception. So there is nothing new. But in recent times, inequality has become very important word. It is now being talked about a lot. Sustainability, in the sense of sustaining development, is also has become very important since the 1990, when the first United Nations conference was held on climate change. A report was given on United Nations climate change. That was the start of the world thinking about sustainability, climate change, global warming, etc. And the 26th conference of parties which have been held since then have reinforced this message, and now sustainable development has also come into the development agenda through the Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted in 2015. Inequality, this was not there during the Millennium Development Goals. Sustainability was not a big issue then. Similarly, inequality was also not a big issue when the Millennium Development Goals were adopted in 2000, the year 2000. Both sustainability and inequality have become very important aspects of modern policy, modern public policy in the decade starting 2010. You may have heard about We Are 99%. Have you heard about this movement called We Are 99% in the USA? So this was held in 2011. people in the USA, there was the Occupy movement. So they occupied public parks when I had gone there in 2011 to USA. This was just before the 9/11 blast. I had gone there. I found that the parks in New York, Manhattan, they were occupied by protesters, and they all had banners saying, "We are 99%." So they were saying that 1% of the population is having all the incomes, wealth, etc., whereas we 99% we are facing a number of problems. So inequality became part of the came to the forefront of public discourse through these Occupy movements, these We Are 99% movements. And in the research side, Thomas Piketty, he wrote the book Capital in the 21st Century. This was released in the year 2013. So this examined the status of income and wealth inequality in Europe over the past few centuries and came to very startling conclusions about the increase in inequality, especially since the 1980s. So his broad conclusion was that from 1940s till the 1980s, inequality in Europe was reducing. But from the 1980s, probably with the start of neoliberalism, Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan and their policies, inequality has increased, has started increasing. So this was again started a flurry of activity on studies on inequality, and now you have all read about yesterday also in the inaugural session, one of the speakers, panelists, he showed a slide showing that in India 1% of the population owns 40% of wealth and then 22% of income. Yes. So this has now become a part of the public discourse. So this national seminar has brought together these two important aspects of present day public discourse, and in a very important and timely manner. And we have had 2 days of sessions where many presenters have made their presentations. Today we are now come at the end. Now when we talk about, we have come to the last session, which is the valedictory session. And for the valedictory session, we have with us a very eminent civil servant and a very eminent public policy thinker, Dr. A. Ravindra. He was former Chief Secretary of Government of Karnataka, and he is also chairman of the Center for Sustainable Development in Bengaluru. So he having straddled both the fields of public policy making and sustainable development, he brings to us his wealth of experience and knowledge in the subject. So we eagerly look forward to listening to his address. I now request Dr. A. Ravindra to give his valedictory address. Sir.
Thank you. Oh, it's here. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vijay Bhaskar, for your welcome and other remarks that you made about sustainability and other aspects. Let me first of all thank MAHE and the other coordinating institutions, ISEC and IIPA, for organizing this seminar on a very, very important subject. And since anyway I happen to be part of both ISEC and IIPA, only I think MAHE is new to me. Maybe as time goes by, if possible, to what extent I can associate myself, let's see. I mean, that's a separate thing altogether. But Let me say, I think you see the title of your seminar or conference is very significant, I would say, because you have said interconnectedness of sustainable development and public policy. See, this is where people usually we view these two things as separate in compartments, in silos. But to what extent you have addressed it during the course of the seminar, I am not sure. I don't know because I was not here. I hope you have. And so, how does one impact the other? See, most of the subjects that I find that you have covered, most of the subjects relating to sustainable development and environment, and climate change, and all other things. And sectoral aspects, like for instance, you have said agricultural sustainability, environmental sustainability, industrial sustainability, or some modernity word you have used. I mean, okay, modernity may not guarantee you sustainability. That's why I think you asked COA this or something, I don't know, whatever you spoke about it. But yeah, these are all very important aspects you have tried to address, many of them. But I think I somehow found that you have missed one important aspect, one sector. I'm not sure, you might have addressed it in some form, but I didn't find that word, urban sustainability. Do you have? Although, I mean, SDG 11 deals with sustainable cities and communities, but whether it was addressed in terms of sustainable development of cities, how do you ensure that, and what are the various issues and all that. So, if you have done that, it is very good. But the only one, just one or two, because I find that I think the audience has gradually dwindled, so I won't take much time to the fag end of the day. Just a very few remarks I'll make. Otherwise, the subject is so interesting, one can go on and on. So, now talking about sustainable development, today I think we are facing unsustainable development in almost every sector, whether it is agricultural or industry. Industrial is the major culprit, industry, or urban areas and any environment. All around we see a scenario of unsustainable development. So, where do we begin? But each sector has to be addressed separately, but at the same time linked to policy, public policy making and implementation. See, you take anything, for instance, let us start with climate change, because at the moment I think that is at the at the peak of public concern in a way. Now, for instance, 2 months, March and April, the hottest months Bangalore ever faced. That is right. And we thought 38 degrees and above that was really the hottest thing, we can't bear it and all that, maybe 30, 39. But the more shocking news was about Delhi some time back, which they recorded 52.9 degrees. But fortunately, the data turned out to be wrong. It's not. So you are talking about data in your last. None other than the IMA, that is Indian Meteorological Department, they have themselves came out and said there seems to have gone wrong somewhere. So, but anyway, about 48 degrees was there, 48 point whatever. So, which also is very unbearable. So, the IMD, they have come out with a kind of a new phrase or new concept called feel like. What it feels like temperature. You see, temperature may be one thing. If it is, say in Bangalore, let us say if it is 38, we might have felt it is like the 40 degrees or what. So, in Delhi also 48, you might have felt it was like 50. And it's a new concept, they are trying to, more for their own research understanding and what can be done in the future, how to tackle. And it is now said for anything above 45 degrees centigrade are dangerous levels. And anything about 55, it is almost disastrous. And it won't be surprising sometime in the future, Delhi or some other northern regions will cross 50, may reach 55, if it is business as usual. You know that concept of business, that is if you don't do anything about controlling heat. Now, how do we control? What are you doing about it? In cities, this again brings me to urban sustainability. It's all linked, as you said. See, most of us who can afford, we have air conditioners. So, room air conditioners or ACs, because it makes the temperature cooler, it is cooler. But what is the effect of using air conditioners? See, the number of air conditioners is multiplying. It is said to be growing at the rate of 10 to 15% every year. The sale of ACs go up, you will find any number of advertisements by this type, that type and all that. So, there are two types. One is cooling effect, which at a certain temperature. Beyond that, it becomes, heat is generated as it goes out from the ACs. So, use of air conditioners, which we feel necessary, because otherwise, living becomes difficult. So, this is how things are. But if you use them, after some time, long run, your temperature will increase, because it has contributed to the atmospheric rise in temperature. So, this is one kind of impact, I thought. So, it deals with temperature, climate change and urban living, urban sustainability. So, how do we address this is the question. So, there are some measures have been suggested, like how do we cool things by natural measures which nature has provided us, like better rooftops and all that. Nowadays you have rooftop gardens. In fact, it's been tried, it is good. And the type of roof you have also, you'll find even in very hot places, even people who can afford, they'll have this thatched roof type and all that. These are things. And the type of buildings, see, many of the buildings like this, air conditioned, fully sealed, it only emanates more heat, contributes to more heat. The other impact of this is that, the more air conditioners and other coolants and all that you have, which means, it generates, you use more energy, isn't it? Ultimately, more carbon emissions. Again, if you take the transport sector, this is one of the most important sectors in dealing with urban sustainability. The transport development is becoming unsustainable because, see, the number of cars or the private vehicles is increasing enormously. In Bangalore itself, it's almost as much as the population, nearly 1 crore or something like that. Because people own 2 cars, 3 cars, bigger cars and all that. And you see how the vicious circle goes on. This is where policy making comes in. I'll just give 1 or 2 examples and close. Otherwise, I thought this is more easily understandable. For instance, let us take the question of our international airport, Kempegowda International Airport, which is close by here. But it is located at a distance of 40 kilometers from the city center. And for people who live beyond, like Jeevan Kumar and Kengeri, I think it will take not less than 2 hours or more, 2.5 hours. Minimum if traffic is normal. If you get caught here and there, then you are gone. So, what is the impact? Impact is that, number one, you have to build big road infrastructure, which also, the type of roads we create, whether it is asphalt or concrete and all, that also is heat generating. And more fuel is used because of so many cars and all, any number of cars. Yeah, the answer they say is promoting public transport. Yes, that is right. They are trying to do something. In Bangalore Metro, for instance, to some extent, it is controlled. See, one thing I have been surprised. This is a public policy question we must address. See, Vijay Kumar, you must also probably think, why is it no metro connectivity was given from the city to directly to the airport, which is done in all major cities? In Delhi, that is one of the biggest advantages. You can now go directly. I had been saying this For a long time I explained to everyone, but somehow they set up a separate, you know that, separate airport authority or something like that, you know, for addressing only this airport connectivity to the city. But somehow that the collapse of something happened to that. Even till today, you know, if that is done, at least quite a considerable extent, and people, I would like to travel by that metro rather than by my car or taxi, pay so much, more than 1,000 rupees to reach your place. I mean, look at the impact of all this because of one decision, public policy decision, to set up the airport here. There was a lot of opposition to setting up the airport here, and I was one of those who opposed it. Because I explained all these impacts that will have, but the decision was already taken, and I think with due respect, Mr. Ramanathan was headed the company. They gave some technical reason, that's a different thing, but still, see the HAL airport was, that area was available. Oh, at that time they said, they didn't immediately agree to that, later they said yes, but okay, that's all past. But I am saying the policy decisions, one public policy decision which is good means it will have good impact. Otherwise, look at the impact that it has had. And living, ultimately what happens is, what is affected is your lifestyle. I mean, how do you deal in a city? That is one thing about, you know, this urban. And of course, I mean, all these, see the basic issue, I don't know whether that was addressed. This is another thing I wanted to ask you. See, among the SDGs, 17 SDGs, you address many issues. I think SDG number 12, if I am not wrong, sustainable consumption and production. That should have been a major topic for discussion. In my view, that is the most important if you want to achieve other goals. If you want to achieve sustainable development, today the biggest problem is unsustainable consumption. I mean, from the global level, say energy, you talk about climate change, carbon, etc. The biggest culprits are the richest countries like the US and all that, you know, the Western countries. But even till today, US is still not taking, Trump first of all trashed your idea of climate change and all that. And if he comes back again, you will know what it is going to be. So that is because it is controlled by the industrial lobby. See, that is the carbon lobby or fossil fuels. Now, the answer to much of the climate change is controlling fossil fuels. But we are still not able to get over it. It's not easy, and I agree. If you want economic, for instance, in India and other developing countries, the challenge is to balance economic development on the one hand and sustainability on the other. And we need to do both. But how to do it? I mean, there are answers. People, I think you would have discussed, and I will not go into it. So, the other big question is, why are we not implementing certain things, although we know the answers? It's not that answers are not known. Many of them, some maybe still you need to explore more research, etc. So, this is where I think not merely public policy, but implementation of the policy decision. So, one is decision making. Good decision, bad decision leads you to more unsustainability. But even certain good decisions taken, we are not able to implement. That is the real problem. As I said, I need not go into the details. You take anything, you know. For instance, you take water sector. Water, we all, we have experienced severe water shortage in summer. Then even BWSSB took some steps, I would say. I mean, they were trying to, you know, first time, some kind of a penalty on people who waste water. For instance, you know, we waste lot of water. But do you know the reason why we waste water? Main reason. Why are we wasting so much water? Because water is priced so low. It is virtually free for many people. Hardly pay anything, you know. So you don't know its value. So if it is, you know, taxed properly or charged properly, at least electricity, yeah, and there is a KERC. So there is some kind of a regulatory system for electricity. KERC, Electricity Regulatory Commission, Central State. For water, I had been pleading for a water regulatory authority. But that will not, because it's again related to politics. politics, I think you had one session on politics of development or something. I don't know what you discussed there. So this is the politics of development. What? See, charging for the use of resources, natural. See, ultimately it comes to natural resources, Sustainable consumption and production means the resources which are available to you, natural resources, their consumption must be in such a manner that we can sustain. So that it doesn't contribute to, environmental damage. But on the other hand, what is happening? The environment is getting it. Water quality is one, air quality is another, that you would have discussed all that. So, like this, there are these issues, we know the answers, but still we are not able to implement. I think that is one question you can take up for further considering, both IIPA, ISEC, and also here MAHE public policy issues. Apart from policy, the implementation part. That's why things are going wrong in implementation. That's where ultimately the question of governance comes. So environmental governance, we say, isn't it? Or urban governance, or whatever it is. So even if you take something like an agriculture sector, it is so badly managed. See, the farmers have their problems, many of them may be poor, and we had, say for instance, farm laws we formulated, which many people thought it is more reasonable, it is good laws. But they could not sustain it because the way it was handled. See, this is where policy, implementation, people, farmers are the people side, the pressure. So whole thing gets linked. That's it. So ultimately, I would say, another SDG, one or two things, that is the last ones. Usually, we don't bother about it, I think SDG 16 is about peace, justice, and strong institutions. You see, peace, justice, and each of them can be elaborated, but I will just refer to strong institutions. Unless we have strong, good institutions, we cannot implement them. Government may pass a policy, but we must allow the institutions to function. Bangalore Water Supply Board cannot raise tariff on its own. Although in theory it is possible, they are supposed to be autonomous, but they have to take government permission. Even electricity, although there is no KERs, informally they do take. So government controls lot of activity, which means you are weakening the institutions. So one is on that side, technical institutions, which are all government appointed nominees and all that. They are more important, I would say, is the local institutions. I think that you must have discussed. There is some session on panchayats and all that. And again, I find panchayats are there, urban local bodies are not there, municipalities. Both are important. So you should address the problems relating to, see, at least on rural side, Panchayati Raj, Karnataka, there is a fair amount of decentralization, if I am not wrong, isn't it? Yeah, see, Karnataka was the first state to bring in Panchayati Raj Act in 1983 when Ramakrishna Gede became the chief minister. See, then later, others copied later. Your 73rd amendment came years later, 74th amendment and all that, and came later. But till today, there is no urban decentralization, hardly anything. It's all controlled by government. Again, the powers that be, they don't like to give up their control over cities. This is where public policy comes. No large city, whether it is not just Bangalore, Bombay, anywhere, Chennai, so they are all still controlled by the government because of the urban wealth. Urban wealth is in cities. I think Vijay Bhaskar was referring to inequalities. Yeah, inequalities are going up, widening. Thomas Piketty referred to, the French economist. Every year he or his institution brings out this inequality report. And particularly in India, they specifically address and say it is widening. 1% of the population owning 50% of the wealth. and all that, that is all true. But it's an extremely difficult thing to address, inequalities. So it's not that easy. Nowhere is there, and let us not be under any illusion. See, there cannot be perfect equality anywhere. At any time, that will not be possible. So what is possible is that you ensure that those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, they come up. See, everyone must have a decent living. All the decent amenities, comforts, a good, for instance, just simple thing like housing. We still have slums, and even let alone slums, even the people, ordinary middle class in a city like Bangalore, Bombay, etc. Getting a piece of land here is so difficult, it's so expensive, you can't dream. So you borrow and things like that. So this is the other factor about it. So, but you find that local institutions or urban corporations, they hardly have any control over these things. It's all controlled by government. So how do you really strengthen local bodies more and empower the people? I think a lot of has been discussed on this aspect. I'll not. So the local institutions, local systems, communities, they have to be strengthened and their voice has to be heard. So that people know. For instance, maybe our recent election results have thrown up one issue about, whether different interests of different regions are properly addressed, or is there imposition, centralization versus decentralization. So this is also a very big issue in both in public policy, politics, economics, fiscal decentralization, and so on and so forth. So I think I'll not take more time except to say that maybe this, I hope this seminar also has given you a lot of food for thought, and you can, I would suggest you identify some areas for research, further research. And for the seminars and all, you can have more focused discussion instead of, I would say, see, if you have 2 days, morning to evening, the interest declines. It's not, these days it's not practical. Those days are gone. You should not have more than 1 day seminar in my view. And sometimes in the city, it's confined to half a day. You will find industries, big companies, they don't have like that, unless there's something very serious to discuss. That means you focus discussion on certain issues. For them, the issues are limited. Here, so many things being discussed. What will be the outcome? You must always look at the outcome. So I hope you will draw up some your summary of conclusions and then maybe recommendations sort of thing. What can be done? What is the future? Now we need to address the future. Let us. These are the issues. These are the possible solutions now. Or what? Now, of course, with technology, AI, and all that, the entire any field is thrown open to me. You don't know what's going to be the future. The future is, the last session was on your data analysis and AI and so on and so forth. AI is becoming more of a threat, maybe, I don't know. It is good and it is bad. Even a person like Elon Musk is scared now. It's what is going to happen? The people. So ultimately, it is the human side of development. I'll end with this. See, it may be. So sustainable development is not just environment or just climate change or any other kind of issue. It is where it is carbon related, water related, underwater related, and all that. Ultimately, it is a human issue, and let me say this, that in climate change, in a way, our sustainability is not so much about the change in the weather. It is a change in the human heart. So if we are able, first we need to set our mind towards sustainability, the consumption and production, as I said. That's a very big subject I can't. So consumption of we have to make energy consumption in the first place. It is possible. We are all wasting a lot of energy. Whether in our houses, buildings, look at all these lights. Some of them may not be necessary now when nobody is there. but still we do it in our houses also. I am not saying we are so how conscious. So people also have to become very, very conscious. It's not just government and government policy, because it's something we are all practicing. Matters relating to electricity, energy, water, transport is our daily, and we are experiencing. So based on our own experience, based on our study, based on our thing, now we have to evolve new answers, and maybe I would certainly suggest that MAHE, since you have such a beautiful campus, so much of land you have, you can think of something new. I mean, how to, for instance, say planting trees. I don't find too many trees here. I mean, trees that will cool down your temperature. If you go to Indian Institute of Science, temperature is 2 degrees less compared to the city. I mean, because of even ISEC has a fair amount of this thing. In fact, there was more tree planting done at one time and all that. So, I think I'm going to stop, but otherwise one will be tempted to go on speaking on this subject. So, let me thank you once again, Harini and all the others associated with it, all the Jeevan Kumar, Anil Kumar, and of course Vijay, I mean all Kumars. Very interesting, right. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in your future activities that you do. Thanks a lot.
Now I would like to invite Dr. Raghavendra Prabhu for his closing remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Distinguished guests on the dais and off the dais, my dear students. It is my pleasure to be a part of this valedictory function on the 2-day seminar on SUSTAINITI. The short form of this seminar is SUSTAINITI 2024. So I was told that this 2-day event was very interesting. We have witnessed interesting presentations from students, researchers and faculty members. And yesterday, the day one, it has begun with the flow of important thoughts and ideas from senior policymakers and administrators, emphasizing the intricacy links between the sustainable development and policy making. These important talks provided a good context to the seminar for day two, which was supported by presentations of ground level research, conceptual ideas, and discussions of frameworks to achieve sustainable development. A synthesis of the ideas presented here illustrates the interest and impact that policy making has on achieving the sustainable growth. This is the spirit that we wish to carry on as the Department of Public Policy at MAHE Bengaluru Campus strengthens its collaborations with the Institute of Social and Economic Change, Bengaluru, as well as the Indian Institute of Public Administration, Karnataka Regional Branch. We hope that this event and many more to follow in the years to come will provide the adequate base and support to grow a successful academic program in public policy. With these closing remarks, I wish all the participating organizations for the successful organization of this 2-day seminar, and presenters for successfully presenting their work. We hope to see you all in all future editions of SUSTAINITI. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to call upon the stage Dr. Harini Santanam, HOD, Department of Public Policy, MAHE Bengaluru. So Dr. Harini will give the memento to Dr. Ravindra.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll sit and take it. Oh, very good. Good sign of greenery, green economy, and
Thank you so
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot.
encouragement and support. So we'll surely take your messages across.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Raghavendra Prabhu will give the memento to Sri T.M. Vijay Bhaskar. Dr. Ravindra will give the memento to Dr. Raghavendra Prabhu.
You want me to give it to you? Okay. It's all right. Okay.
Sri T.M. Vijay Bhaskar will give the memento to Dr. Harni. Now I would like to call upon on the stage, Dr. Harni for a vote of thanks.
Before I give the vote of thanks, I would like our Deputy Registrar Sir, Dr. Raghavendra Prabhu, to give a few mementos to my colleagues here as well, who are the backbone of this whole event. I wish to invite Dr. Prashant Chaudhary, Dr. Priyanka Saharia, and Dr. Grace to the stage to receive their mementos from Dr. Raghavendra Prabhu. Thank you, sir. So we are at the fag end of this event. I might miss it in a couple of hours from now because we started it with so much energy, and the energy has been sustainable energy for the past 2 days. So it's my pleasure and privilege now to propose the formal vote of thanks at this valedictory session of the 2 days national seminar on sustainable development in an unequal world, public policy paths. We called it SUSTAINITI 2024, joining two important words, sustainability, sustainable development, and niti or policy. So SUSTAINITI 2024 became our branding, and we are very, very happy that this has concluded successfully today. To move on, at the very outset, I wish to thank the chairman of this session, Shri Vijay Bhaskar ji, for leading the proceedings of this very important session of closures. My sincere thanks and gratitude to Shri A. Ravindra ji, who actually has given us a mandate to look at policy research from different aspects, especially from the implementation aspect, people, implementation and policies, he said, and this we will take across as our message as we produce more and more policy related research from our department as well as from the academic aspects that we take over in the coming year. My thanks for this wonderful session, panelists, Dr. Indu Murthy, Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar, and Dr. Gururaja for their impactful discussions, along with Dr. Thomas Felix, who led the discussion. It was really wonderful and impactful set of discussions that we had, and they shared their thoughts and experiences in the intersectional fields of public policy and communication, which was very insightful to us. Thank you, ma'am. My thanks for the participants of this session. Actually, it was something that we conceived at a very, very different level of understanding. We wanted this to be a transdisciplinary event, and all the presenters here have come up with that spirit in their presentations. I'm really, really thankful to all the presenters who presented their work at this forum and made this very important value addition to what we are thinking of in terms of thought leadership, in terms of knowledge base, improvisation and enhancement, and each of your work has added value to what we do here at SUSTAINITI. Thank you so much. I'm thankful to the chairpersons of each of these sessions who actually led these discussions very beautifully and brought so much meaning into whatever was presented on the forum in the last 2 days. I thank Professor Raghavendra Prabhu for his important remarks of the closure of this important event, and which also tell us that we are in it for a longer time, and we will actually bring more future editions of this program to the front and have more meaningful discussion as this one, and much more impactful recommendations and outcomes in the coming years. Thanks are due to all the presenters and participants who made this eventful, and my gratitude and thanks to my colleagues, Dr. Priyanka Saharia, Dr. Prashant Kumar Chaudhary, and Dr. Grace. She's not here with us now, but all three of them worked together immensely to put this set of sessions through from MAHE. I'm really, really grateful for their teamwork, along with our PhD scholars, Sanjay and Arya, who are behind the stage. But Sanjay, Arya, can you come out? And also Aditi Ghosh, my junior research fellow, who are actually, putting everything across backstage for us. Thank you so much for your help and support. Moving on, I'm also thankful to my administrative executive immensely, Sri Lakshmi. She's just been running around. You may not find her here because she's always on the run and doing things which are required for the next event that's happening, and she's always been a backbone to our team. I thank her so much for her help and support. My gratitude also to all my colleagues who have worked behind stage, starting from the creative stream at Spread, Rajeshwari and Miral, who actually put this branding of SUSTAINITI in place. Although they don't know the subject so well, they actually listen to each of our discussions very, very accurately. They imbibe the spirit of sustainability, and they've tried to produce the excellent conference kits, the designs, the templates, all that you have seen here, which have brought the SUSTAINITI brand to life. So I thank them for that, and equal thanks to our printing partner S3 Communications, Srikanta, who tirelessly helped print all the good materials that we have received today. Thank you so much to these partners. I thank my IT team here who have patiently helped set up this whole event. They have been with us throughout. Sumant, Mr. Prashant heading the team of IT, along with Sumant and Abhilash. Thank you so much for staying late and also helping us put all this together. It's going live, I know, and a lot of people came and said that they enjoyed the inauguration and valedictory ceremony watching it live. Thank you so much for this support that you're rendering us. I'm thankful to the marketing and audiovisual team here as well, who have created a presence on the social media for us through this event. Thanks to our caterers, Chef's Touch, Mr. Chetan, who have been feeding us so well and with many tasty dishes the past 2 days. My thanks also to our finance team who have guided us throughout this organization of this seminar. Special thanks to Shri Basavaraj G's team and the travel team, Mr. Vinod, who have also actually, brought us the peace of mind by giving us what we require at the time that we have required, and that's great support. Although it's at backstage, that's what makes a difference when we actually conduct such events. I'm thankful to them. I'm thankful to our security personnel, our office support team, Maruti especially, and all our helpers who have helped us place all the creatives in place, put everything in place for us, and really helped us at the times that we have required them. Not the least, my immense gratitude to our Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Madhu Veera Raghavan, and our Deputy Registrar, Sir, Professor Raghavendra Prabhu here, who were generous enough to support this initiative of DPP from MAHE's end and continue to be our supporting and our strength. Finally, I thank our partnering institutions who actually made this happen together with us. We are a very young team, but through your guidance and support, sir, we have been able to bring this event together with all of you. Thank you so much, Shri Vijay Bhaskar ji, Professor Rajashekar ji, Dr. Jeevan Kumar ji, Professor Anil Kumar ji, and Dr. K.C. Smita. Thank you so much for all your support and your guidance and your constant wishes to make this happen. Finally, I'm hoping to see all of you back in the next edition of Sustainity in the coming year. Thank you so much for being, and my heartfelt gratitude to our students of MA Public Policy for voluntarily coming up to this event and joining and participating in this event till the end. Thank you so much. Wish you all a very happy and a very wonderful weekend. Thank you.